As you know, today's topic is visualization and network data and public engagement. And as a general roadmap for today, I will start with a very short review for module 2. Then we will go to some network visualization principles, some technical stuff when it comes to what's important to take into consideration when we're doing standard network visualizations, and we will do afterwards a mini exercise and at looking at two visualizations of social networks and see what we can tell about them. And afterwards, my colleague Bianca will continue with the topics of ethics in research and data representation and approaches in citizen engagement. So, uh, as you know, if you participated in the second module, generally, a social network is a set of actors and the tie between them. So we have two very big elements here: actors or nodes and ties or edges. Given these two big categories of elements, we deal with two data types. So we have attribute data, the properties of individual actors, and relational data, which are the properties of connections between the pair of actors. Now, uh, in module 2, I also showed some graphical representations of social networks. So uh, generally, if we're looking at the social network of individuals, it can look like this. If we're talking about personal networks, so collections of personal networks from each individuals, they can look like this, varying from each person to another in terms of their size, number of ties, composition, and so forth. But what I want to stress is, for example, in this case, this is a visualization of the network. This is not the network. And it will be made very clear during today's meeting why what we see here is not the network, but a visualization of it, and why this distinction is important. Uh, some other things to remember, and it's important when it comes to visualization of networks, is that depending on what kind of ties we're dealing with, we can talk either about undirected versus directed networks. So networks where um, in undirected networks, we have ties which are implicitly reciprocal. So we deal with simple lines. So if we have a tie from A to B, that's implicit from B to A. So the representation can be as a simple line. We don't need arrows because they are redundant. However, if we have directed networks where there's no implied reciprocity, so reciprocal ties can exist, but they are not obligatory. Here, we're not dealing anymore with simple lines, but we're dealing with arrows, either one-headed arrows or double-headed arrows for bidirectional ties. But here we have this presence of these arrowheads. Secondly, we also talked about this distinction between unimodal networks and bimodal networks or multimodal networks, where the distinction is given by the number of entities, or better said, the number of types of nodes in the networks. So in unimodal networks, all nodes are in the same ontological category. So all of the nodes are people, or all of them are countries or organizations, and so on. Whereas in bimodal networks, we talk about these, let's generally call them affiliation networks. So people by events, authors by articles, pupils by classroom, employee by department, and so on. Lastly, we have this distinction between binary networks and weighted networks, which also tells us of what kind of ties we're dealing with in the network. So we're dealing with either simple presence or absence of the tie, so 0, 1, or we are dealing with uh, edges that also have, let's call them edge attributes. So frequency, intensity, uh, emotional closeness, strength of contact, and so on. And here we're dealing with ties which are either absent or can go to whatever n value, which is the maximum on the scale that we measure that frequency or intensity. Now, after this short review, let's go on to some network visualization principles. And here we're going to talk about the visual grammar and common pitfalls. So when it comes to uh, visualizing networks, what we're dealing with is what are called visual variables. And I will start with this question. So first of all, what is visualizations of networks useful for? And we have this we can call it a domain or methodological practice of visual network analysis, right? Which is exploring the relational data and exploring the output of the relational data by looking at layouts rather than just computed metrics. Because, of course, we can say something about the network density. For example, we can compute the density of a network by doing the ratio between number of observed ties by the number of theoretical ties, and see we have a density of 0.12. And that will automatically tells us that 12% of all the ties that could have existed in that network are observed. However, we can also observe density by looking at the network, at the visual layout of the network. But we have to take into account that the choices that we make in visualizing these networks are not neutral. So these visual properties, they are not mere illustration of a pre-existing structure. The choices that we make in plotting a network will affect the final layout that we reveal and that we analyze and that we present to our readers. So, first of all, when talking about visual variables, we can talk about visual variables at the levels of the nodes. And here, usually we talk about size, color, and shape. I put label here with a different color because it can appear, but it's not that common because a lot of times labels usually crowd and visually overload the visualization. But let's start with size. So In a network visualization, we can either leave all nodes with the same size, or we can decide to make some nodes bigger and others smaller, depending uh, on various criteria. Um, and of course, when we do this, it's to be expected that larger nodes will uh, um, will attract the attention and will signal some sort of influence or importance. Now, given that size in its general logic is something numeric, it's best here as a general advice for best practice. Here, the advice is to use a numeric variable. So um, we should use numeric visual variables with numeric attributes. For example, we can set the size of a node by its age, right? If our purpose is to signal who what nodes in our network are the older people and who represent younger people, or we can choose, and this is usually used, a sort of centrality metric, like degree centrality. So please evidentiate. I'm telling the computer, please evidentiate uh, ties with most connections. If I'm talking about degree centrality. Okay. Second, we can talk about color. So we can also color nodes. So clusters or categories are color coded, and readers will expect similar color. Of course, they will expect that similar colors will mean similar roles. And as with size, here the best practice is to use color with categorical variables, because color in itself is a categorical variable. So use it with a categorical node attribute, and also, if possible, with few categories. So for example, we can color nodes by sex. We make males with a color, females with a color, or by residency, urban with a color, rural with a color. Why few categories? Well, uh, again, for not uh, crowding the visual space um, with too many colors. Colors should represent categories, should discern between clusters, various clusters of nodes, or various categories of nodes. And the general principle is the fewer, the better. And you will see in the exercise that I've prepared why this is the case. Similarly, with color, we also can talk about shape. So we can, instead of coloring the nodes, or besides coloring the nodes, we can also set nodes by shape, um, make them triangles, circles, squares. It's less common than color, because a lot of times shape differences are harder to detect at scale. This meaning that the larger a network is, so the higher the number of nodes that we try to represent in a single image, then it will, at some point, it will become hard, for example, to um, distinguish between uh, a triangle and a diamond. Also, why it's shapeless used because shape is hard to combine with size in the same layout. Because if you want to transmit to the reader the importance or the influence of a node by its size, but you also use shapes, well, it's hard to distinguish between a triangle of 5 and a square of size 6. And for this reason, it's better to not to combine them. Uh, in Ending here about nodes and visual variables, we also can talk about labels as textual identifiers in a picture. But as a good practice, here it's good to label only nodes that are with high centrality or which are exemplar, that we want to evidentiate uh, uh, in our final layout. Because, for example, if we set the size of a node by, let's say, the number of connections by degree centrality, we also want to for the reader to be aware who those nodes are. Maybe let's say that maybe they are organizations or various internet pages or internet accounts. Then it's best to put labels only for selected few that best transmit what our intention is. Now, some examples here. So, for example, uh, here we have a network of 15 individuals, and the size of the node is set by degree centrality, so by number of connections. And we see here that nodes with uh, higher connections are the largest nodes, whereas those with only one or two connections are smaller. Color, we can, for example, if in this network of 15 individuals, we have a node attribute like smoking status, which separates between smokers and non-smokers. We can choose to, if that is important for our analysis and for what we want to transmit to the reader, to evidentiate who are the smokers and who are the non-smokers, and to see if this visual representation also transmits some sort of clustering, like smokers tending to have more ties between them, and non-smokers also to have more ties between them. Here it's clearly not the case. It's the case between more so between smokers, but not between non-smokers. As a first insight that we can tell by just looking at this representation. Shape. So we can, for example, here I've made smokers with triangles and non-smokers with circles. As a bad practice, as I told you earlier, here is an example of combining shape and size, right? Because, for example, here, it's hard to tell what's the difference, or if is there any difference between this triangle and this square here. Here, it's kind of easy to tell because it's a small network with few nodes. And I can see that this triangle has 4 connections and this square has 4 connections, but it's not the job of the reader to sit there, look at the visual representation of the network and start to count lines adjacent to each node to see if there's any difference there, right? So uh, this is an example of bad practice. Now, of course, the because we have the second element in the network, the ties. Here we also have some visual variables which are correspondent to what we've talked earlier uh, about nodes. So first of all, as I said, we can talk about direction. So we can have either simple lines or various kinds of arrows. Then we can talk about weight, line weight or thickness, which indicates strength or frequency. This is as an equivalent to node size. We can talk about line size, and as uh, bigger nodes draw the eye. Also, this is the same case for heavier lines. They also draw the eye, and people generally have this tendency to interpret the thick ties as more important than others. Uh, Also, we can talk about color or style. So um, we can color relationship types. Uh, um, we can color lines by relationship ties, or uh, as we did with nodes, talking about shapes, we can talk about various styles of lines or shapes, like dashed lines versus continuous lines, um, various forms of dashed lines like interrupted uh, lines or dotted lines. But another thing which is important to understand here is that they when and how to use them, because oftentimes they can signal weaker links. So people will look at a dashed line versus a straight continuous line, and will say, well, this must be less important because um, uninterrupted lines are also interpreted, like in the case of thickness, uninterrupted lines or continuous lines are um, interpreted as more important than those dashed lines. Again, some visual examples. So line weight. This is the most common visual variable applied to node edges because it's the most logical and the most natural, because as with node size, if we have edge weights, these are usually numeric and they map onto this numeric logic of line thickness. Okay, let me see if there's any question. Oh, okay, Maria. Um, Going back, so line weight, as I said, most common here. If you see, for example, some lines are thicker than others. As an insight into this image, here are three weights from 1 to 3. So if you see, for example, here, this is those who have a weight of 1, These are those who have a weight of 2. These are those who have a weight of 3. Um, Going forward, line shape. This is less common, and usually they denote relationship type. So I said earlier, we can have continuous lines, these dashed lines, or this third example of a dotted line. Color, also color can be less common as a visual variable than thickness, but as a best practice here, um, either use them for relationship type. So if I want, for example, to differentiate between family ties versus non-family ties, I can color family ties with blue and non-family ties with gray, or whatever color I may use. But if I use line color to denote intensity, then I have to enter in this logic of color intensity and use a single color with different gradients. Here, for example, there are three different gradients, from a light gray to a darker gray to black, which indicates the strength of the tie. The lighter the color, the weaker the intensity, the darker, the higher the intensity. So if you, I repeat this, if you use line color to denote intensity, you must enter in this logic of color intensity, which uh, mm, where you can use various scales and gradients, like having, it's best to have a single color, like going from light blue to dark blue, or whatever color you may use, like I used here, from light gray to black. Or you can use other scales, color scales, like, um, for example, the just because it came to mind here, the continuous Viridis scale, right? Because it can go like this, these various color palettes, like going from yellow to some dark blue with these various shades of green. Right, so in this kind of logic, we need to be, if we're using like a line color for denoting intensity. As I said, it's less common. More common is to use actually thickness and leave color for other purposes. Now, another thing which is very important when it comes to network visualizations is the layout. Uh, so what network layouts do is that they choose how the structure is revealed, and there are various layout algorithms. And what are these layout algorithms? They are simply put some set of rules which will automatically place the nodes and the connections between the nodes um, to create this sort of readable map. Now, there are various layout algorithms for various purposes. We need to know what we want to express through our visualization to know what is best to choose, because each algorithm or family of algorithms has their purposes, their strengths, but also their shortcomings. What I've put here are three general families of algorithms. Uh, the first and most common are the ones called force-directed or spring embedders. What do they do? For example, they start with nodes, which have this tendency to repel each other. But what ties will do, they will act as springs to connect this and bring together these nodes and reduce their tendency to repel each other. And through various iterations, the image will resolve itself to a conclusion that will reveal clusters and central nodes. So if you want to reveal clusters and centrality, uh, what's best is to use force-directed um, layouts. You can Google and what examples of force-directed layouts. Uh, Most commonly, you will find a layout called Fruchterman-Reingold. This is the default layout algorithm used in a lot of softwares. Kamada Kawai, it's another common force-directed algorithm. So uh, this is the first family, which is common, very common in social network research. The second one is the top-down hierarchical tree layouts. Here, we talk about these sort of parent-child relationships, um, like organizational chart, authority structures. Um, these are very useful, for example, when we have networks, directed networks, which are comprised of uh, unidirectional ties. So if we have a network where all ties are unidirectional, tree layouts can be very good uh, uh, to use as a visualization. For example, yesterday and in our other meetings, I've talked about link tracing. For example, or snowball sampling. So where we go from one person to another person through recommendations. Here, for example, we can use these three hierarchical layouts to look at how the recruiting process uh, was going throughout the fieldwork. Uh, Another family are circular or arc diagrams, where here the nodes are placed in a, a circular manner, and um, then ties are spread across this circle. Not all, but some of them um, are also considered rational plots, and you will see in a second why, because here the person who does the visualization chooses a lot of the parameters that are used for plotting. So I'm not just choosing an algorithm and I let the algorithm do the work for me through its internal rules, but it's basically what I do is I create the algorithm and the internal rules for plotting, and these for this reason they are called rational, because uh, the researcher or whoever is doing the visualization has a certain reasoning behind why nodes are placed in a certain manner, why some categories are chosen and others are not, and so on. So, for example, this is what I've told you about the Fruchterman-Reingold algorithm, which is a spring embedder, a force-directed algorithm. So networks from these algorithms tend to look kind of like this. Tree or hierarchy layout. So as you see, it shows this rule to put on the top the node with most connections, then on the second layer, nodes with the uh, on the second place as a number of connections, and here those with fewer connections. Of course, not perfectly, because here, for example, we have this node which has only one connection, but it's not at the bottom. It's here on the second layer. Why? Because it's connected to this node from the first layer. Circular layout. So as I said, all nodes are placed in a circle, and then various lines are drawn between them. Also, the circular layouts can look differently. So this is a random circular layout, but we can also have these type of diagrams, which are called chord diagrams. And here, if you see, still the nodes are placed in a circular fashion, but this is of that family of rational plots, because I chose, for example, here to put in one place all the smokers, then here all the non-smokers, set the size by the number of ties, and so on. The last in this family of arc diagrams, and also a rational layout, it's what's called a hive plot. So here, for example, let me just make this bigger. So here we have the cluster of non-smokers, the cluster of smokers. With white, you see intra-cluster connections, so connections between smokers, connections between non-smokers, and with blue, uh, 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 connections which are cross-cluster, so between smokers and non-smokers. This is also a rational layout, because I chose how these um, nodes are placed, how the lines are placed, and all the other rules here. Okay. Now, lastly, before we go to the mini exercise, some common pitfalls in network visualization. First of all, and most common, it's the visual overload, and this a lot of times is known also as the hairball problem. So when we have very big networks with thousands of nodes, um, the force-directed layouts, what they will do, they will produce this tangled mass of overlapping nodes and edges, which tend to be similar to a hairball. This is why they are called hairballs. Okay. Okay, Celia. So solutions not to have hairballs is uh, either to filter, so you can choose to evidentiate only a number of top nodes by degree centrality, between a centrality, or whatever numeric attribute that denotes a network's importance and reason for being evidentiated. Aggregate, so instead of showing individual nodes, we can collapse and create super nodes and represent a community as a single node, which will make the visualization easier. We can choose an ego network approach. So instead of showing all nodes, we can show, we can extract from this hairball an ego network. So focus on a single node that is important for our analysis and evidentiate its relations. Or if we have the ability of presenting dynamic networks, not static visualizations, but dynamic interactive visualizations, we can have this drill strategy. So we can start with an overview and let the reader to zoom in, select nodes, concentrate on that, on those nodes, and so on. Um, the second pitfall is the misleading, some misleading effects of visual variables and rules. Uh, so most commonly here is that the biggest node is oftentimes regarded as the most important. But what's here good to remember, when, also from our second meeting when we've talked about network centrality, for example, is the fact that what does centrality mean? Well, it depends. A node can be central if it has a lot of ties, but sometimes a node can be central not if it has a lot of ties, but if it connects various subgroups who are disconnected. So who is a broker. So uh, we should be wary when we evidentiate nodes, not to mislead um, uh, the readers. Uh, the second one is that central position means most central, but this is not necessarily the case because, again, nodes are placed into various positions at various XY coordinates according to some rules that the layout algorithm has. And a lot of times, uh, some nodes may end up in the center by randomness. And it doesn't mean just because a node is in the center or around the center of the picture that it means that that node is important or whatever. Also, the idea of clusters, so that a cluster means a unified community. So, for example, there are various algorithms in network analysis called community detection algorithms, which will place nodes into what they considered to be distinct communities. How do they do that? These are also some algorithms which choose um, instead instead of us. So don't interpret and don't try to convey the idea that a cluster is necessarily a unified communities, because sometimes the boundaries are fuzzy. if we apply various algorithms on the same network, some will say that you have four communities, whereas other will say that you have three, others will resolve to two or five. It depends. Uh, Lastly, is the pitfall of decontextualized visuals. So each network should be accompanied by some sort of framing, legends, titles, whatever. But having just placing a visualization without anything, no legend, no, or no title, it can make the visualization semantically empty. Uh, People will struggle to understand what's there, and they could lose interest, or they could go to the wrong interpretation. Now, let's go to this mini exercise before giving the floor to Bianca. So let's look at this image. What can you say just by looking at this image, at this visualization? Anyone who would like to try, please, anything that comes to mind when you look at this image. If you have any good to say about it, anything bad to say about it, please do.
You can see some points that are big. I mean, the purple one, the red one. You definitely see that some people or subjects or whatever have more influence, but it's really messy. I mean, you do understand the clusters that are separated because you're using different color schemes, but overall,
Okay.
you got a mess.
Yep. Yep. So this is the common hairball problem, right? So this is what people refer to when you say that your network is a hairball, right? Of course, we can see some nodes are bigger than the others, uh, but um, there are, and we can see that, okay, we have some communities here, right? So because we have this blue area and this uh, orange area, but as you said, the color schemes are quite dubious because, for example, it's very hard in some points of this image to distinguish between yellow and uh, orange ties, or between orange and blue ties, or between blue, orange and red ties, sorry, or between blue and violet ties. Also, so we're talking about a cognitive overload here, visual overload and cognitive overload on our readers. Very bad practice. We have a high node and edge overlap. We have a high number of colors because we don't have just node colors, we also have edge colors. So um, also a problem is the fact that uh, they use the same colors to represent intra-community nodes and edges. So basically here, from my understanding, is the fact that we have, let's say, the orange community with orange nodes and orange ties among them. But to some degree, it's hard to visualize. Um, Then also it's hard to understand the logic between node placement, because I see, for example, here that I have kind of this blue community, but why is this quite blue node here where it seems that it's kind of the either the yellow or the orange or some overlap between yellow and orange community. Uh, Another thing, things do not scale here. So labels do not scale. So we have here, we have some labels, but who knows what because I see that there is some text, but who knows what that text says. And node sizes, various differences between node sizes are hard to visualize and interpret, because of course I see that I have some big nodes here. I can see the big nodes, but for example, I cannot say if this node here is bigger than this node. So um, these contains some examples of bad practices that you can do when you visualize, when you do a visualization of large networks. And you should go to these other solutions like filter, aggregate, um, but not presenting it like this. Now, let's do a second exercise with a network which is small. So it's the same structure from here that I've shown you here. So it's the same. But let's see, what are the problems here? Or are there any problems here with this visualization?
It's still very hard to read and understand because there are different color scheme. There are dotted and straight lines, double dotted lines. I mean, it's the purple one and the black one.
Okay, yes.
And I'm not sure if the triangle, the blue, the hard blue triangle is bigger than the light blue triangle, for example.
Yep. They're the same size, but of course, because we've applied this combination of size, shape, and color, things tend to be very obfuscated. So here we also can talk about a visual overload and a cognitive overload, even if you're not talking about a hairball. So come on, it's a small network, only 15 nodes. But still, here I took everything out of the bag and applied it. So I said, okay, can I set the size? Let me set the size, but let's also color, but let's also set the shapes of the nodes, but let's also color the lines, but let's also uh, uh, set the thickness of the lines, but let's also set the shape of the lines. Um, so for example, here, it's very hard to tell if this is thicker than this. I, for a fact, know that it is because I've created it, and I know that this pink uh, dashed line has a size of 2, whereas this green continuous line has a size of 3. But come on, it's very hard, and it's uh, uh, things should be visualizations should be intuitively from the moment you look at them, right? So um, high high number of colors for nodes. Basically, each node is its own color, which makes this visual variable useless, right? Because the purpose of color is to denote communities, groups, subgroups, what have you. But here, if you have a lot of colors, then colors become useless. If you have a lot of shapes, shapes become useless. That's why I said earlier, categorical attributes with few attributes. The fewer, the better. Two or three colors, or let's say maximum five. But going beyond five, it's visually uh, tiring and cognitively tiring. Right, so here I broke all the rules that I've talked about earlier. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. I will stop sharing my screen now, and I will leave the floor to my colleague Bianca.
Hey. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Julian, for the introduction. And thank you, Andrea, for organizing this meeting. I'll try to share my screen in a bit. Okay, I won't see you, so if you have any questions or suggestions, you can write them in the chat, and Andrea probably will flag them, and we will discuss about them. So thank you again for this meeting. Let me see if I can. Okay. Okay. I hope you are seeing the screen. So today I will try to discuss the ethics related to research and data representation. I will try to focus on how we are collecting data in an ethical manner in social sciences, and how we can use data in an ethical manner. And then I will try to have this line between between different types of research, from extractive research to participatory research, and participatory and citizen engagement. And I will finish with some ideas related to how we collected our data in for the 4P-CAN project in the Living Lab of Lerești. And of course, I'm open to discuss any questions or suggestions related to the presentations and other things that are related to the presentation. For the main idea of uh, social sciences is why are we talking about research ethics? And I want you to know that in the social sciences and somehow in the medical field, we are working with people, we are studying people, we are studying their behaviors, their relationships, their beliefs, and we are trying to look at them not from an abstract point of view, but at the same time to see them as human beings with rights, with vulnerabilities, with some expectations related to how they are respected and how they are treated when they are part of specific research. And I know also from experience somehow that research ethics and ethics may seem like a procedural thing, like a very bureaucratic thing, but at the same time, these rules exist because history showed us, and sometimes in a very painfully way, what happens when science somehow loses sides of its human subjects. And you need to take into consideration the fact that the ethical principles and ethical guidelines should shape every stage of the research, starting from how we are designing our questionnaires, how we are addressing the questions through how data is collected, till how findings and results are collected, disseminated on different channels. Maybe you are wondering what is research ethics, and of course there are a lot of definitions in the literature, and I try to give you a short one. It's a wide variety of values, norms, and institutional arrangements that regulate scientific activities, and somehow it helps in this translation of something that it feels quite abstract for some of us, related to ethical or moral principles, in guidelines, and in clear guidelines on how to work with data, how to extract data from people, and how to disseminate our findings. There are a lot of research ethics committees. One of the most important is the Norwegian National Research Ethics Committee, that tries to categorize research ethic guidelines into internal ones and into external ones. The internal ones refers to good scientific practice in terms of academic freedom, originality, openness, trustworthiness, and of course regulations that applies to the research community at large. Thinking about the integrity, impartiality, criticism, and somehow our objective way of analyzing, for example, the results of an analysis that we are underdoing. And the external ones, the ones that are really important for us in the Living Lab and also in the 4P-CAN project. It's related to relationship with participants, because we need to focus on respect, on human dignity, on confidentiality, anonymity of the results and the data, and of course informed consent, and the relationship with society, thinking that somehow science should be public, and at the same time we need to consider all conflicts of interest, if it's the case, to discuss about independence or other, I don't know, conflicts of or financial conflicts, let's say, in terms of funding, and we need to be very clear about these types of interests. Maybe some of us will consider that this subject of ethics relates to something that it's given by some abstract philosophical debate, but there is a direct line between some historical events and each document that follow these events. The story begins with the Nazi medical experiments during the World War II, because there were physicians that conducted forced experiments on concentration camp prisoners, testing them for hypothermia, for infectious diseases, and different surgical procedures, but without asking any consent. And due to these horror experiments, the international community was outraged by these experiments, and they asked to write down what should have been somehow obvious, that voluntary consent is not negotiable, and this became the Nuremberg Code in 1947. Unfortunately, even though this code was active. The abuses did not stop. In the United States, there is a very well-known study called the Tuskegee syphilis study that ran for 40 years, where hundreds of poor Black men were told they were receiving different treatments for bad blood, but they were in reality studied by uh, actually the researchers were trying to study untreated syphilis and deliberately withheld penicillin even after it became available. And this event is linked to the Declaration of Helsinki. And at the same time, there is this Belmont report that is also important for social sciences and also for the medical sciences, that established three core principles for all research involving human subjects: respect for individuals, beneficence, and justice for everyone. In the social sciences, there are also two studies that are really well known: the Milgram study and the Stanford Prison Experiment studies, where these types of, for example, in the Milgram study, participants believe they were administering electric shock to others, and this created some psychological distress and the psychological harm to the people involved in the experiment, with no real right to withdraw. And the Stanford prison experiment stopped after 6 days, and there are some voices in the literature saying that even Zimbardo lost his ethical compass. In terms of the most important documents, and probably if you collected data, different types of data, you stated something related to the Declaration of Helsinki, which is one of the most important one in the medical field. It was written by physicians for the medical research, and expanded the Nuremberg Code, because it requires transparency, full transparency in terms of goals, in terms of funding, in terms of different objectives of the study, of course, conflict of interest, or different risk for people that are involved in a specific study. And of course, this one is the most important, as it was revised multiple times, and it's considered to be the cornerstone of international medical ethics. And of course, we have the Belmont report, created by the US National Commission, created in response to the Tuskegee scandal. And it states three ethical principles, as I said: respect for people, for individuals that are included in an analysis, in a study, beneficence, to maximize benefits and minimize the risk, and justice in terms of ensuring fair distribution of burden and benefits across populations. At the same time, it is the Belmont report that lead directly to the creation of the institutional review boards that we are probably familiar with today, that are independent committees that review and approve all research involving human subject before a study begins. In terms of principle for doing ethical research, I tried to categorize them in three main ideas: protecting participants, reporting data, and the power and conflict of interest. In terms of protecting participants, of course, the main principle is related to doing no harm, no physical or psychological or any emotional or any type of harm to be done if someone participates in a study. Of course, there is voluntary participation, and the potential respondent or the potential participant should sign an informed consent that it relates to a formal statement describing the study and what his or her participation means and what are we requesting from that person, and of course anonymity and confidentiality to protect data. In terms of report, we need to be we need to have this in mind to report in a honest way. No fabrication of data, no falsification of data, no misrepresentation, no manipulation of the data in order to fit some results or in order to sustain some hypothesis, some research hypothesis. And this is the main reason why today or recently there is this movement in science in general to publish also the databases and how did you conducted the analysis, and you have to be transparent in terms of data that you have used, and probably, as you probably know, the data should be publicly available on a repository. I saw that from the European Commission, the most used public repository is Zenodo. And in terms of the types of analysis and how the analysis was conducted, how the data was modeled, or what types of analysis you did for your research. They are also or they should also be presented on Zenodo, or to be uploaded on Zenodo in order for others to have a somehow transparent way of how did you conducted the analysis, and of course to be transparent about the methods that you used during your analysis. In terms of power and conflict of interest, there should be something that we need to keep in mind, this idea of power dynamics, because somehow researchers hold a kind of power over participants, because they are designing the study, they are collecting the data, they are talking with participants, they are controlling the reporting and the dissemination processes, and there are some cases where participants, for example, may feel some pressure to respond to different surveys or to fill in some questionnaires. So we need to keep this in mind when we are conducting our research, and of course to try to recognize as an auto-reflexive behavior from a researcher, and to minimize this power imbalance between the researcher and the potential respondent or the potential participant. Conflict of interest, of course, in the publication process. Probably you saw that when you are publishing an article, you have to disclose any type of conflict of interest, a financial one or some institutional one that can that may have affected in a way how how you you selected the research topic, how you design the methodology, how you conducted the analysis, and so on and so forth. And of course, you have to disclose any conflicts in a very transparent way. Of course, working with vulnerable population must be hard, and you have to take into consideration the fact that some of them may be part of some vulnerable groups like children or elderly people or people that are coming from socio economic people that have low socioeconomic status. And of course, as researchers, we need to be aware of how we collect this data, and to ensure this type of participants that we are conducting the analysis and the research in a very ethical and very objective way. The principles that we have discussed by now, the general principles from the Belmont Report to the Declaration of Helsinki, somehow they are intentionally broad. They are quite general, but at the same time, there are some different parts of the social sciences that deals with different types of problems related to ethics. And as you are now aware of this social network paradigm or social network methodology, you should know that social networks analysis is not an exception in terms of ethical principles. And as a methodology that maps and analyzes relationship between people, it raises a distinct set of ethical challenges, because when you are studying a network, you are not studying just the individual and the personal characteristics of the individual, but you are studying their connections, their position inside the social structure, or their influence. And of course, data that we are collecting about different individuals may reveal different information about others. There is a really nice article from D'Angelo and Ryan in 2021 that raises different ethical problems in terms of collecting and working with social network analysis and social network data. And of course, there are some problems that emerge precisely because of what network visualization does, because it makes visible what participants did not necessarily intend to reveal. And the main solution identified by D'Angelo is to, when you are conducting a social network study, you should be, of course, transparent and to show participants some example of network outputs, and to make them understand what type of data you are collecting in order to be sure that there is no psychological harm, let's say, to the participant. Also, you need to be aware as a researcher on the fact that you may work with small networks, and somehow these small networks. In these small networks, participants can identify themselves after formal anonymization, and you should be explicit with participants about this type of limit. And of course, you should be really aware of these problems, and you have to tackle them in a very objective way to be sure that you are assuring confidentiality and anonymization. And there's a nice idea from D'Angelo and Ryan, saying that they are somehow drawing on the Goffman theory that participants are somehow performing their network, and maybe the researchers may not collect the data that they want, but the data that the participants wants the researcher to receive, such as inflating ties, such as omitting uncomfortable connections, or at the same time omitting some personal information, even though the participants know the information. He or she doesn't want to reveal this type of information about others. And of course, to tackle this, you have to have this mixed method approach, or to include this mixed method approach. There's another paper from Kadushin, who raises actually a very interesting question: who benefits from network analysis and from the results of network analysis? And of course, the answer is somehow uncomfortable, because there is this idea that only academic researchers benefit from the results by publishing or by receiving citations. Organizations and society may benefit, but of course, this is a somehow structural problem that does not have an easy solution. In a standard survey, you can decline to participate. You are simply absent from the data. But in a network study, others can name you, can describe the relationship with you, and the position you are holding in a specific social structure or in the personal network. Somehow, without your knowledge or consent, and you have to be aware of how you are handling this type of data. And Kadushin is is building on this idea that non-participation does not guarantee non-inclusion. And of course, we have to have different guidelines on how to work with this data. Proper handling of the data and the analysis, including the complete control by the investigator, can eliminate harm to respondents and those that are nominated by the respondent. At the same time, somehow the question of Kadushin raises on a general question related to how we should how we should deal with different types of research, and who are the main beneficiaries of research, and on the results of the research. And unfortunately, there is a specific line in the literature focused on extractive research. um, Extractive research means collecting data, knowledge, or stories from a community, primarily for the benefit of external researchers, such as academic people or academic professionals, without meaningful participation, consent, or reciprocal benefit for the community. The result is that somehow in the literature they are saying that this type of extractivism produces academic careers, somehow conferring disproportionate benefit to the researchers, and a little benefit to the people that are to the people where from where the data is extracted. And there is this idea of a parachute model of research, where researchers dropped from outside. They are gathering the data, they disappear with no longer term change resulting in the community. And somehow this may also lead to skepticism, and somehow to it also goes to fatigues in terms of data, and in terms of the fact that participants somehow they feel that they are only used and nothing they are receiving they are not receiving anything from the fact that they gave data to the researchers. And somehow in contrast to the extractive research, there is a growing family of collaborative approaches that has emerged under the prefix of co. It's about the co-paradigm, co-design, co-production, co-creation, and it means that a research or a study is conducted both by the researchers and both by the citizen, let's say, or by the participants. Is this idea it relates to this idea of co-ideation, collaborative dialogue to generate and share new ideas in relationship to community needs, co-design because the researchers and also the participants are collaboratively working in defining the problem and designing the solution. And at the same time, they are collaboratively implementing the solution to co-production. And it relates to this idea that from knowledge flowing one way from the citizens to the researchers, now knowledge is produced together. Is this idea of knowledge being shared through communities, through citizens, and this idea of knowledge is co-produced by the researcher and by the citizen. This slide relates to the fact that with the help of the living labs, we move from research on communities to research with and for communities, trying to help these communities to understand their needs, to focus on what they are asking from us. in terms of access. Let's say if I'm referring to the Living Lab in Rerești focus on cancer prevention, they are trying to discuss with us the different types of access to medical care, to I don't know, medical doctors or medical professionals, in order to help them with their health status. What we did in the 4P-CAN project in order to follow this idea of co-creation and to also follow the ethical guidelines is that we actually went on the field work with a folder. I have the map in here. So it looks like this, and inside this folder we had information sheet. The information sheet that is the most important one, because we try to be very transparent with what type of data we are gathering, with the objectives of the project, and we tried to respond to every question that may arise, and every situation that may create somehow distrust. And we tried to keep the people involved in the Living Lab and to be part in the Living Lab for a long period of time. So we really wanted to create this idea of trust, to somehow break the barriers related to this idea of power dynamics. They consider us somehow partners in discussing about their health problems. Of course, we discussed about the benefits that we offer to the participants. It is worthy mention that we did not use any financial incentive. We made active a hotline for them to call us and to call the medical doctors from the team, and to ask for different advices on health. And of course, we stated that they have the right to withdraw at any time without any negative consequences, not for the first wave, not also for the second wave or the third wave of the data collection. We also have an informed consent sheet. We tried to make them understand that their participation is voluntarily, how we will handle their personal data, what type of personal data we are collecting, and of course this one was a bilateral consent also from our side, with our name and our information. And they also signed the GDPR form. And of course, for everything that we did in the Living Lab, in terms of publications, in terms of data collection, in terms of different waves that we conducted, we asked for an ethical committee approval for every activity. I will give you some information related to how we had this idea and how we implemented this idea of citizen engagement and the co-paradigm in the Living Lab. Of course, following all ethical principles that I've already discussed. We did not start with a medical intervention in Lărești. Here is the main road from Lărești. We started with creating social relationships with media with people from media from Lărești, with the mayor and with the local authorities. These are the timeline. This is the timeline of events and as far as I saw, Julian already presented some things, but I want to emphasize a few things here that you can see that engagement did not happen instantly. We had the cultivation phase. We tried to discuss with the local authorities to gain their trust, to be very transparent and very clear about the study and the objectives of the study. And of course, we tried to focus also on schools or on the medical cabinets in Lerești. And as you can see, somehow each stage that each wave actually of collecting the data was doubled by the different interventions in the community, social interventions in the community. We had different events on cancer risk factors. We had a nice event on nutrition. We and I will discuss later a bit about the walking football competition that was a first for the community in Lerești, and what are our plans for the next health festival. I was telling you about the media engagement because somehow the local media played a crucial role in promoting our study and our research in Lerești. And at the same time, the main role somehow indirectly, we did not expect this media cover. The media cover transformed our activities in the Lerești Living Lab from an academic initiative into a shared community stories. Here are some news from their online newspapers, but at the same time, I want to mention the fact that, for example, Evenimentul Mușcelean, the Mușcelean event has also, the newspaper has also a Facebook account. And when we talked about, when they presented the 4P-CAN project, they also published on Facebook, and people said that, oh, we are also part of the project. Of course, we tried to cover the schools, and we collaborate. We collaborate a lot with the schools from Lerești and also with the local authorities. This is a nice event that took place in Lerești, the European Commission Cancer Mission bus, as a form of citizen engagement. This was one of the most important events as for the project and for this idea of creating with citizens from Lerești. We asked citizens that participated in having their blood tension tested. We asked them, what would you do in the next period for you to be healthier? And they said that they will think about eating less processed food or less salty food or less sugar. And what we did next in terms of activities was to calibrate our activities on this idea of nutrition, physical activity, and for the physical activity, we had the opportunity to promote our project. The 4P-CAN project by the Zimbri football team, their local football team, in order to somehow enhance this idea of being active, being physically active. So we tried to bring these advices and to make them part of the community. This is the first and the most important event in the Living Lab, the Health Festival, the first Health Festival. They were playing something that it was very innovative for a rural community in Romania. It's called the walking football competition, and this walking football competition is somehow the symbol of democratizing active aging and democratizing sport, because you have to walk in order to hit the ball, not to run, and everyone can participate, irrespective of age, from younger adults to teenagers or to adults or seniors. It doesn't matter. You can participate, and of course we were really attentive to any health issues that may arise during the competition. At the same time, we had activities that included kids from school. Then for the health festival, the second edition of the health festival in 2025, we also had walking football competitions, and the local authorities were involved also in the project, and citizens from Lerești and citizens that participated in our study were receiving health advices in terms of physical activity, in terms of nutrition, in terms of skin problems, because we had also dermatologists. At the same time, we've been working with different medical doctors, such as psychologists or doctors that are experts in lung problems. We also collected some health data information from the people that participated in the health festival in 2025. When we combine cardiovascular risk with cholesterol levels, we can see, unfortunately, a clear pattern, but somehow, even though this one is a warning signal, it is also an opportunity. As you can see, nearly half of the participants fall into high or very high cardiovascular risk categories, and about 1 in 5 already show high cholesterol, but the good news is that these risk factors are modifiable, and we already see some protective behaviors. Non-smokers and non-drinkers are much more likely to remain in normal cholesterol and low risk categories. And the message here is not that the situation is hopeless, but the situation shows a window of opportunity and a window of action in terms of prevention. We also had a community engagement event, a really nice event, where we tried to somehow give something to the community from the fact that we collected the data from multiple waves. So we tried to give something back, and we gave them these really nice pictures. We call them the art of networks. We had an event in 2025 where we show them this type of visualization, these types of visualization and visualizations. And the main point here is that somehow they seeing these visualizations that are based on the data that we extracted from them, they gain more trust in how we collected the data and how we handle the data, because we tried to keep the anonymity and of course the confidentiality of data as stated by the ethical guidelines. And they were trying to understand which one is which one is my network, which one is my network, am I here, am I the central node. But we told them that we cannot tell them anything because the data is confidential, and we respected the anonymity. At the same time, we tried to put them to rate our event, and here are some tickets that we used. And they had to fill in a grade on these tickets, and then to keep the ticket and to give us only the grade, and of course without keeping any information related to their name or their age. We also tried to transfer the exhibition in Arges, which is the county, and this title is not something that I put it by myself, because it's something that I wrote in a newspaper, in a local newspaper, related to how are things going in Argeș, and they are saying that Argeș is the leading county in cancer and cardiovascular disease prevention. And you can see here, as far as I know, Julian told you about the link tracing network, and we tried to recreate the link tracing network from the 4P-CAN for the 4P-CAN project in a 3D manner, and it was a really nice visualization of the nodes and the links between the nodes. You saw some pictures in here. If you are interested in more details related to the pictures and how can they be interpreted, you can access our GitHub account, Lereș Digital Stories, and to see the stories behind the data. When we presented the canvases to the people in Lerești, we did not attach them any description, and we tried to discuss with them what this painting can show. And for example, this one is called community texture, that presents some parts of the social network of Lerești. It is made up of 2,378 individuals with a lot of ties. The orange ones represent citizens who participated directly in our interviews that are part of the Living Lab, and the blue nodes represent individuals that were mentioned by them given the personal network analysis that we followed and personal network methodology that we followed. And of course, you can see here in terms of visualization, the size of the nodes that indicates the degree of connectivity. This one or this type of visualization are more appealing to citizens, let's say, and maybe not for the academics, but citizens were really impressed and they were trying to figure it out. Who is this node? Who is this one? Who is this one? What is happening in here? So we were trying to discuss with them and to make them understand how we collected the data and how we handled the data, and of course how we created these networks. There are 9 canvases that were exposed in the art exhibition, and of course there are different types of network visualizations. If you have any time or if you have any interest in them, all the descriptions and all the information are stated already in our GitHub account. Okay. And this one is the site. Okay. And that's it from my side.
Oh, just a very big thanks for you, Bianca, for your fine presentation and for being with us today, and also for being with us next time uh, on the last module of the 4P-CAN Academy.